Yes, welcome to the No Stay Pride, Mesa, Arizona. I don't know what was going on there. For some reason, I am going to have to stream this. Well, let's see if we have this streaming now. Oh, isn't that great? Okay, so we are going live here, so I do apologize. I don't know what's going on with the regular feed, the way we do it, just not working. So it's really, really unfortunate that it has to be something like that, but it's not from my end, so we've got that going for us. So yeah, okay, so we don't get HD. All right, no big deal, but welcome to the big broadcast here today on my YouTube channel. You want to give us a call and join us on the big show. It's 218-632-9399. 218-632-9399. And, I thought we were live. Okay. I guess everything was screwed up. All right. Maybe those who were subbed were able to watch, but we're here live now, finally. Wow. Okay. Episode 61 of the big broadcast, brought to you today by Bill and Dan in New Hampshire. I appreciate the support of the show, guys. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to help support the show, you can do so at markstevens.net. Use the Cells account or PayPal. I do appreciate the support that we get for the big broadcast. It's April 18, 2018, live from the Fortified Compound in Mesa, Arizona. And a lot of stuff to get to, including your calls, as long as there's not a problem there. But before we get to the calls, I do want to address a few things. I think I usually don't talk about this stuff, but the guy is so arrogant and just so damaging to, you know, and the way, the influence that Sean Hannity has, because bottom line is the guy has a huge audience that he's able to influence with the crap that he's doing. To see him moments away, hopefully, from a fall from grace, that this arrogant know-it-all who is so blatantly transparent that with his love for the Republican Party. I love that even when the Republicans were in a lot of trouble a number of years ago. So I'm not a Republican, I'm a registered conservative, which there's no such freaking thing. But did not disclose that he shared a lawyer with Donald Trump, and he's on there blasting his lawyers, well, the raid on his own lawyers' offices. And who said that Sean Hannity was a client? Cohen's lawyer. Trump's lawyer's lawyer actually was the one that did it a few days ago. I think it was on Monday. So, yeah, you can call that fake news all you want, but not disclosing you have some kind of professional relationship with a lawyer and then go and report your news that you don't disclose that. You can say whatever you want about folks like NPR, but they always disclose when they are discussing a story that involves a sponsor or someone that they have a relationship with. So, hopefully, yeah, the show is live right now. It is April 18th. So I know that there's an issue with the title of the show. So what I can do is I can fix that, and then it'll come up. It's April 18, and it is episode 61. So now it'll say what exactly it is. So, all right. So hopefully we don't have to hear any more from Sean Hannity. That just like Bill O'Reilly, his career in propaganda will be over real soon. I love it's the same MO. Everything negative, no matter how well researched, no matter how well documented, no matter how many sources. If it's negative, fake news. How about Fungool? Hopefully this guy falls from grace and falls hard. So, anyway. Speaking of people who need to fall and fall hard, I'm going to be doing a separate video for this, a tyranny spotlight, but a few things going on in Minnesota recently. Stephen Wenzel, he is a judge in the 8th District, Judicial District there in Minnesota. I guess it's Carver County, I think. But yeah, well, it's the 8th Judicial District. So this guy is a real piece of garbage. Now, this is reported to me directly from JT, who was present in the courtroom for this, and I don't recommend doing this on cross-examination anymore because it just takes too much time. We usually don't have the time to do this, and it's not necessary. We just go for the throat. Did you determine that the laws apply to me and that I violated them? You did. Right. Do you have any evidence to prove that your claim that the laws apply to me? Go right for the throat with these people. I'm not saying it's a figure of speech, and a punch was just for exaggeration. I'm not saying to punch a witness, although some of them deserve it. And so what JT reported was that they had the police officer confirm that presence within the state of Minnesota was an essential element of the crime, and that there was no crime if there was no evidence that they were present within the state of Minnesota. Remember, the plaintiff is listed as state of Minnesota. So then they asked, and this happened 3 times, by the way. Three times! The police officer confirms that it's an element of the charge, confirms his claim that the defendant was present within the plaintiff's state of Minnesota. When they asked what the state of Minnesota was factually, that's when this piece of garbage said, don't answer that, cleared the courtroom, and instructed the defendant not to ask any questions like that again. Now, even though I don't recommend doing it, it was still pretty effective. 3 times this piece of garbage, Stephen J. Wenzel. Every time she raised this on cross-examination with these 3 witnesses, he cleared the courtroom and threatened her. Oh, because it goes directly to prior testimony. He said it was an element of the charge, why he believed he had jurisdiction. But what the state of Minnesota is? Oh, no, you can't answer that. Another thing in Minnesota that's going on, and I'll report on this in another video also, but I've spoken about this before. This actually involves something in Minnesota in the district court where I was physically present and watched this happen. There were several other things. It was IRS, where the IRS was attacking somebody. I had personally spoken to the agent who did the affidavit of good faith that they filed into the district court. He, nor his supervisor or the bigger supervisor, none of them could produce any evidence whatsoever to support their claim that there was jurisdiction, that the laws applied and that there was jurisdiction. It's just assumed. They said that asking that question was a frivolous argument. And they had given me, I've reported this before, they gave me a copy of the IRS document regarding frivolous arguments. And I said to all 3, I said it to the stooge, I said it to the immediate supervisor, and the big supervisor of Michigan. I said, give me the subsection where asking for evidence or showing that the IRS does not have evidence by their own admission, show me where that's a frivolous argument. Of course, they couldn't do it. So what the one in Michigan did was send me another copy of this 80-page document. Because it's not in there. Yes, the complaints were filed. It's mail fraud. They lied. It's not only mail fraud, but they lied. Title 18, Section 1001, which means nothing. At least to them when it applies, because the rules don't apply to these people. So what happened at this, when it got to court, was one of the first things the defendant was doing was pressing and objecting to, he wanted the witness, the agent who did the affidavit, and wanted him on the stand. He was in the damn court. The judge denied this, refused to allow cross-examination, No explanation given. The only thing he did was sit there, and every time an objection was raised, and he would say, denied, and say, anything else. Anything else. Which is why I had suggested that if in a situation like that where the judge really doesn't give a damn and he's just saying anything else, throw a chair around the room at the prosecutor or at the judge. Get their effing attention. If they charge you with battery, they have to put the judge on the stand to convict you. Do something to shake these animals out of their complacency when they're playing God with our lives. So what they did subsequently, even though every single time he was forced into court, every time he objected, I want the agent on the stand. I want to confront my witness, the witness against me. You're taking his affidavit as the absolute, from the hand of God himself, truth, and I want him on the stand because I already have prior testimony. He doesn't have a clue as to what he's talking about. Every single time this piece of garbage judge denied him confrontation. No explanation even attempted. Then, on appeal, no mention is made by the appellate court about the denial of cross-examination. It comes back, and they weren't supposed to enforce the penalty part, which they did anyway, and they continued doubling down, lying that when it came to cross-examination, he waived his right to cross-examination because he never asked for it at the first hearing, which isn't true because I was there. So you're in a situation like this where the judges are lying that he waived confrontation. That ship has sailed. You should have brought that up at the first hearing. I did. I complained about it in the second hearing. I complained about it on paper. I objected in writing. No, that ship has sailed. That is an example of a piece of garbage who knows that they are absolutely immune. No one's going to hold this piece of garbage accountable. They lied. Yet, what you'll get is you'll get lawyers defending it. Well, it went on appeal. You had your day in court. It doesn't matter if you think the judge lied. This is the way the judge ruled. And I say, Abba Fangul. I'm tired of these boot-licking, scumbag lawyers and apologists that no matter what happens, it's just like with Trump, no matter what the hell this man does, people will still support him. It doesn't matter. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason to it. It's a matter of arrogance and not being able to accept you made a mistake. Sickening. These people make me sick to my stomach. But we do have at least some good news today, and I'll get to the calls in just a second. In that judge's name, again, Stephen Wenzel, and I'll do a separate video so that he is immortalized, at least on YouTube, so that people have the opportunity that if they type his name in, they'll find out what this piece of garbage does. Ask a police officer on cross-examination a question relating directly to testimony on cross. This piece of garbage clears the courtroom. I love how this Governor Dayton says that his dedication to fairness and ethics, really, that's because you've never actually been a defendant. That's because, Mark Dayton, you profit from what this garbage does. All right, I'm getting a little out of hand over here. I apologize for that. But I will be posting a video after the big show today because we do have another success story that will be posted on markstevens.net. So I do have that video done. I just have to upload it. So definitely look for that after the big show today. And so let's get to the calls. Looks like we have Los Angeles. We have area code 310. You're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from? Area code 310. You're live on the big show. I'll mute you back up. We'll go to area code 929. You're live on the big broadcast. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Mark. This is Rick up in Central Oregon.
Rick, welcome back to the show. What can I do for you?
Hey, well, tell me where to go next. I got a letter back from the Justice Court in Redmond, Oregon, saying that the judge found me convicted of driving while suspended with a $220 fine. So since I submitted that that motion and everything, what's the next step?
So you filed a motion to dismiss, and
Right?
did you have a trial?
No, I had basically a simple arraignment with just the justice of the peace and the police officer and myself.
Did the police officer go on a stand and testify at this arraignment?
There wasn't a stand. He testified, but not on the stand. We just stayed in our seats.
You realize you were at a
Whatever.
trial. You were at a trial, not an arraignment.
I guess, yeah. Yeah, it was a trial. You're right. It was a trial.
Well,
Yeah,
did you make objections? Did you ask the police officer questions?
I didn't have my documents that I was going to submit, and then so the judge gave me 20 days to submit my evidence, and in those 20 days, that's when I got the motion from you, filled it out, and went in and delivered it to the clerk. So I didn't really have any FaceTime with the judge after the trial.
But during the trial, didn't you cross-examine the police officer and make objections?
No, because I wouldn't have known. I didn't know anything about how to do this.
I have a script available, and I say on every single show about doing the role playing,
Mark,
and yet
I didn't find your channel until like a couple days after the trial.
Oh, a couple days after the trial. Okay, I've got it.
Right. Yeah, so I got that motion in there. Now, since I filed for, since jurisdiction was raised, and my understanding is that once it's raised, that has to be established before you can go further. Isn't that true?
That's the rule, yes.
Okay, so what recourse do I have now with this guilty or this conviction?
Well, you can file a motion to reconsider and say and point out that jurisdiction was not established, and clearly from the police officer's testimony, I'm sure nothing in there came out as far as jurisdiction, and see if you can get that reversed.
No.
You didn't do anything on cross-examination. The police officer just made his statements, and then you said something about having evidence to submit, and he gave you 20 days to do that, and so then you found.
Well, because I was going the right to travel direction.
Oh, gosh.
I was explaining to the judge that I was learning these rules about right to travel, and then of course then I met you for your show. So,
Okay.
Although I still think that the right to travel is something to. I'm going to keep looking into it because I got a question for you, Mark.
Sure.
You said that there was a time when the right to travel would have some teeth, right? Back in the day?
Back about 80 years ago or more.
Okay, so it seems to me that I've read in a lot of the stuff that right can't be taken away. If it was a right 80 years ago, why would it not be a right now? You can't take away a right. It's right there in all the Supreme Court rulings and all the what do you call it, common law or whatever.
Well, the problem is that.
Where did the right go?
Well, what they did, and the Supreme Court of the U.S. allows this. The Supreme Court they changed their laws, and so to pay for the increased regulation and to pay for the cost of the roads and whatnot, what they did was they instituted a license tax on you and on the vehicle, as well as gas taxes and whatnot. What they did was they took the state right to travel and said this is a taxable privilege. So to pay for the regulation, we're going to do this. We're going to tax you. Now, the Supreme Court has upheld unanimously. Well, they have always upheld the right of the state government to tax under the police power to pay for regulation. So when you look at Supreme Court cases that say, like Shuttleford, I think it is, something like that, when it says that a right can't be converted to a privilege and taxed by the state, if you read the entire statement, those cases all say the state government can't tax as a privilege a federal right. And that if they do that, you can ignore the licensing scheme with impunity. Okay, it's easy to say when you're a Supreme Court justice and you're not going to be killed on the side of the street by a zealous cop. So that's right. Where, if you look at it from a legal standpoint and their laws and their interpretation, they're allowed to do that. And many have tried to get them to reverse, and no one has come even close to being successful. And it's a losing way to do things, because why go in and make legal arguments, such as just pure arguments of law, which don't involve evidence, legal interpretation, as opposed to holding the prosecutor to their burden of proof and making only issues of fact? I mean,
well, there is a point though, Mark, that if something is wrong, if it's fundamentally wrong, to say that it's not worth the fight, that's a losing way to go. You know what I mean? Like,
but I'm not saying to do that. What I'm saying is there's a more effective way to defend against this, and it is by challenging the arguments being used against you and showing that holding the prosecution to their burden, showing that they don't have any evidence, where they have to start spewing crap like some of the critics do. Well, they don't have to prove that. Or, well, now you're arguing philosophy. They start screaming philosophy, or, that's a lot more effective. I'm not saying don't challenge them. Hell yes, challenge them, but do it effectively. And by raising legal interpretation, using legal interpretation, you're going to lose every single time in the courts. That's not going to help bring about any meaningful change. So what you're looking at doing is having them change their laws, that it's not a taxable privilege, that it's actually a right. And I don't see that that's a meaningful defense or fight.
If it's being looked at from the standpoint that somebody just doesn't want to pay for like road upkeep and stuff like that, then I agree with you. But to have a corporation like the DMV extorting money from us, I mean, why is it okay for them to do it, but we don't like it over, somewhere else?
Well, I agree with you
on who we're going to allow to take money from us.
I agree that they are just a private business that controls society. It's a ruling class. I get that. I just don't think it's an effective way to go about bringing about a voluntary society and bringing about social change by trying to get such deeply entrenched laws changed. I think that it's better to get them changed or abolished by noncompliance. I think we have a better chance of that through mass noncompliance than and flooding the courts with challenges and to their factual basis, and flooding the courts and risk management with complaints against their insurance. Sure. But legal interpretation and trying to get such a deeply entrenched and long-held laws changed, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going. I don't think we can do that because the lobbyists are far too powerful. And you're talking about just one of the lobbyists will be the insurance industry. So you add to that the private prison system, and you and I, we don't stand a chance against that. But we can certainly mobilize people locally for mass noncompliance. That's going to have a hell of a lot more impact than trying to change a law.
And you can bet that I'm spreading the word, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, but I would spread the word, Rick, as far as that they're a gang of killers, thieves, and liars without a shred of evidence to support their claims that their laws apply to us. I think that's a lot better way to go. I think it's better and more effective to show people like, look, if I was to force a perfect stranger to give me money, wouldn't you consider me a criminal? Well, hell yes, I would. Well, isn't that what government does? Yeah. And that's going to be more effective than trying to convince them that they're trying to trick people, or they're, to get driver's licenses and all this other right to travel crap that is so easily debunked. Because you're going to lose credibility with the very people you're trying to reach. The best that they can do when they try to talk about me being wrong, is that, oh, well, Mark is just arguing philosophy and he has to go to the ballot box. That's the best they can do. Or they say, well, they don't have to prove that. That's just stupid. Of course the laws apply. But somebody who's a skeptic is going to say, well, okay, you believe the laws apply. Why do you believe that's true? Where is the evidence? And then they're stuck. So we still retain our credibility when it comes to the critics. But if you do it that way, someone can easily show how you're wrong, and you're going to lose a lot of credibility with those people.
In the end, people have got to stop being followers and letting be so-called leaders. run us into the dirt.
Yeah.
You know, when the people start leading, then those leaders will start doing their job, what they're supposed to do. I think that it was said something like that, you know?
Yeah, well, people need to
wake up.
people need to stop accepting what's handed to them as true. They need to stop watching Fox News and crap like this. They need to actually ask questions that may not have an answer that they want to hear. They have to be skeptics. You have to wipe the slate clean. Why do I believe this? Why do I believe that? You know, it's like people say, well, why don't you believe that these laws apply to anybody? Well, because isn't the Constitution just a written instrument? Yeah, nobody bothered to sign it, and even if they did, aren't they all dead? And how do you prove that there's a government? Because you have to show that there's a body politic, and the idea that you can force people to give you money and that will somehow create obligations of allegiance and protection is just wrong. And I'm not arguing philosophy here.
Well, it's not even hard to understand that. But
no. And that's why I think it's a more effective way for you to go. Yeah, I think it's a more effective way for you to go if you're going to be telling people and trying to reach people and give them the tools necessary to understand that we're not dealing with the government. We're dealing with private businesses. We're dealing with men and women who force us to pay them, and that's it. That's why we can go in and have any success at all, because they are just men and women forcing us to pay them. They're criminals from beginning to end.
Hey, and Mark, on that point, because I know that you have other callers, and I don't want to take up your whole show, but I went to court with a friend of mine this morning. She got a not driving while suspended, but she didn't have a valid Oregon driver's license in possession, and she wasn't able to provide proof of insurance at the traffic stop. Well, she got insurance on the vehicle. The officer, of course, told her that if she did that it'd just be dismissed or whatever, right? So we go into court today, and right from the start, the judge says there's two pleas you can make. You can either plead not guilty or you can plead no contest. No other pleas. All right. And so she went up when she was called, and because she didn't have a license in Oregon, her license was from California. He didn't have anything to base it on, because he said that the fees or the fines were based on the driving record. So he just came up with this arbitrary amount and fined her $530 on this, and she had proof of insurance with her in the courtroom and wasn't able to present it to him or anything. And it was like an ATM machine for the government, you know, with people just walking in and being the ATM machines.
They fleece people. That's what they're doing. They're extorting the community.
So I told her that I'd mention it because I knew I wanted to call in today. What do you do when you're stuck with a judgment like this?
She pled guilty, or no contest, rather?
No. That was the only thing that she could plead.
Well, that's the thing. The judge is lying.
She didn't know.
And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate she wasn't, prepared, because the judge is lying. You can plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest. Right. So this is traffic.
The thing is, I looked in the Oregon statutes on the Oregon revised statute that she was charged under. I looked it up online today, and it states that if you provide proof of insurance to the clerk up to the day before the hearing, that you only have up until the day before the hearing. You know, it's like it's a setup.
Well, they are trying to avoid having people actually go to court, so they don't have to actually work. What I would do is I would still file a motion to dismiss for lack of evidence proving jurisdiction.
For her?
Yeah, I would still fight it. $530.
Okay, so you can raise the jurisdiction thing even after the judge has imposed a fine?
Yeah. Jurisdiction could be raised at any time, even on appeal for the first time.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, subject matter jurisdiction cannot be waived. End of discussion. There is no discussion on that one. You can waive personal jurisdiction, but you can't waive subject matter jurisdiction. So, yeah, I would still do it. Okay?
Mark, I'm glad that I found your show. Like I said, I'm sharing this with my friends. I like that that Jay Reddick or whatever. He seems to be rather fond of you too. You know.
He's had success too. Yeah, I appreciate his reporting on the show.
Right on.
All right, appreciate the call, Rick. Let me know. Let me know what else we can do.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
We'll move on. We've got, what in the heck? What the? Oh, we have area code 929. You're live on the No Stay Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Area code 929. Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to mute that up. There's some horrible background noise. And we're going to go to area code 347. You're live on the No Stay Project. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Dan from New York. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing all right. What part of New York?
Queens.
Queens.
Yep.
I have family from Woodside.
Cool. I have a case with my daughter. I had sent you an email. I'm not sure if you recall. I'm sure you get a lot of emails. Before I start, just appreciate everything that you do, Mark, and you're the best. I mean, love what you do. Learned about you. As a matter of fact, some time back I got a case dismissed, and that was for not wearing a seatbelt. And it was dismissed with one of your templates, your motions. Fantastic. Well, I spoke to my daughter about this in the past, and she's in college now, just her second year. And I had mentioned it to her. She thought about it and said, "This is a joke, Dad, but you gotta support the Constitution and bop, bop, bop." And I said, "Well, really, there is no Constitution. It's a piece of paper." And she was like, No, it's not. In any case, make a long story short, she got stopped for speeding going to Long Island. She's in Stony Brook.
Okay.
And Suffolk County. She was in that area. And last month she went there. Obviously, she came to me for advice. So I said, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go there and you're going to obviously not fight with them because they love fights. You just go there and ask questions and basically challenge the jurisdiction. So she went there, and it was funny because she said a lot of people there. The judge calls her up, and I had mentioned to her, do not let the judge make a plea for you. You make sure he does not plea. Just let him know you're challenging jurisdiction. She gets up and the judge starts talking, and then he goes on and says, so I'm going to put in a plea of guilty and blah, blah, blah. And she said, excuse me, I didn't plea. What do you mean? I've never made. The judge stopped and said, wait a minute, you interrupted me. You don't do that. You take her out of the courtroom. So the clerk took her out of the court. She went into a conference room where I guess they tried to convince her. And she said, I don't know what happened. He just got upset. And I just asked, why is he pleading for me that I never plead? Anyway, long story short, they basically said, listen, you got to come back next month. Next month is tomorrow. I'm going to go with her. Quick question on that. Would I be able to help her in any way? Or I just got to sit through it. She's actually going, they said it's a trial. According to the letter that I saw that she received from them, they said on it that any motions will be addressed tomorrow before the trial. I put in the motion for to challenge jurisdiction, your template.
You got to do something about the background noise, Don.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe that's when. So,
well, you're not going to be able to speak for her, and you're not going to be able to make objections or anything like that. And I think, if I remember correctly, in the email, when they hold a motion, a decision on a motion, this is for everybody, When they hold on and sit on a motion and say that they're going to hear it at trial, that is the legal way of saying Abba Fungal, pay me.
Yeah, exactly.
What they're going to do is they're going to deny all your motions with no explanation whatsoever. You're going to go in, all your motions are denied. Are you ready for trial? And one of the things, an example that I give here to tell you just how unbelievably dishonest this is. Imagine for a moment, everybody, you file against that judge. You file against that piece of garbage for damaging you. Does anyone have any doubt whatsoever that they're going to do it the same way as they're doing with Don? That they're going to say to the judge's lawyer, you can argue sovereign immunity the day of trial, sir. Do you think for a moment, Don, that's going to happen? No. And the reason why is because if they are doing things and they're taking due process and fairness seriously to any degree, they are going to hear the motion, a pre-trial motion, well before the trial. The day of trial for everyone, look, and I'll say it again, it's Abba Fungal. It's F-U, pay me.
Yeah.
So that's what's going to happen. Unfortunately, there's not much time. I mean, she needs to work with the script and do some role playing to be able to object effectively tomorrow. And
well, along the way, I have been kind of advising her, giving her videos and stuff. Is she looking at them? I have no idea. Today, I'm going to speak to her when she gets home from college at 8, and I'm going to sit down and just review. So you think they're going to proceed with the trial tomorrow?
What I envision happening is what's been reported and what I've seen firsthand for myself. Whatever motions that she has before the court, they're going to say denied. And they're not going to discuss it. We are here for trial. We're going to... And over her objections, they're going to swear the comp in. I think one of the best things that could happen tomorrow is if you go to the old post office there in Stony Brook, it's right down the street from Head of the Harbor. There's a beautiful lake right there. If you get to spend some time there, it's a decent day. I mean, it's right down the street from that old post office with the columns. And so if you keep going north of that lake, you'll actually hit the harbor and you'll go through that thing. Anyway, I wish there was more. I mean, she's going to have to go through some of the role playing, or at least with the script, so she knows some of the objections. Her entire purpose there is to hold the prosecution, whether it's just a cop or they have an actual lawyer there, but it's to hold the prosecution to their burden. They're making claims, and she wants the proof. And if they're going to just deny everything and put the cop on the stand, and you'll have this video to reference later today, the way to really hit them square between the eyes is to ask them, did you determine on your own that just because you saw me in Stony Brook, then New York, that your laws apply and that you had jurisdiction to stop me and give me a ticket? And they'll say, well, yes, of course. Yeah. Then the next question is, what evidence do you rely on to prove that just because I'm physically in New York, your laws apply to me and give you jurisdiction? And that should effectively, and so they probably will impeach the police officer and say the cop is not competent to testify, and she has to object and say, no, it goes directly to his competency and credibility and his prior statement that just happened 8 seconds ago. But she's going to see, unfortunately, firsthand what you've been saying about them being criminals and that the Constitution is just public relations. She's going to see it firsthand when she watches what that judge does and how he's going to completely disregard any pretense of fairness at that point.
Well, Mark, last month when she went in, it was funny because she was communicating with me via text, and I told her, you want to see something funny? I said, because the attorney was telling her, no, jurisdiction is a trial issue, and he kept trying to convince her on that. And I said, you want to see something funny? Could you tell him to put that in writing and to sign it with his name? And when she told him that, the guy freaked out and said, I'm not going to do that. Are you crazy? Why would I want to do that? I'm not going to sign that. And she kind of laughed about it and said, Dad, you're right. You're absolutely right. Question on the scripts. I noticed that the scripts say civil, criminal, and tax. This would be considered civil.
Yeah, but you still want the criminal one because it's a government attack, and it has certain civil elements in there. So that's why I recommend people get the criminal one, because it'll cover all your bases. The civil one is geared more towards something like the Michael Scott law firm when they're suing you for a debt collection. I do want to address this when they say it's a trial issue. What you want to do there is object, and you want to say, what she did was cool, and she really backed this jackass up into a corner. That was nice.
Yeah, I think she really did a great job. I was very surprised.
Yeah, that was good. So a leading question, and you want to let her know that leading questions have the answer or the information in the question. So when they say it's a trial issue, you say, objection, is it your position it's a trial issue only? Mm-hmm. Take your time, jackass. Think about what you just said to me. I mean, you're not going to really say that to the judge, but you keep your mouth shut and you let this idiot try to get his way out of this corner you just painted him into. Yeah. The thing is, no judge is actually going to write something like that. But you can say, look, I'm putting a motion to the court and I want a written response from you. I'm saying I want to challenge jurisdiction before the trial. You're saying that you're denying my motion. I want your reasons in writing. See, him putting the reason in writing to deny a motion is not out of the question. They're not going to do it. It's just like having an IRS agent say, look, hey, I tell you what, I will give you a check for $5,000 right now if you put under oath, you sign an affidavit under oath that your laws apply to me and you have personal knowledge of that. They're not going to do that because the thing done is the critics, the people who write these things about me, they're not going to be the ones making these determinations in court. They can sit there and say, well, all these things. They know that there's going to be a real judge. Anyway, if you get a script, go contact me at Frank Rizzo 3 on Skype, so she may be able to get an hour or two of role playing done. But the basics here, Don, are still helpful. Dan, I'm sorry. Yes. The basics here still rule. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. They have to have evidence to support their claims. Hit them at their foundation. They believe that the Constitution applies to her just because she's physically in New York, and that gives them jurisdiction. Pound away at that. If the judge isn't going to allow it, she has to object, and she wants to know why. If they're going to turn around and do like they usually do and say that the witness is not qualified to testify or not qualified to give legal determinations, then she has to hit them back and say, well, objection. Then I move to strike all his legal conclusions from the record, including the ones on the ticket that say that I broke the law, because that's a legal conclusion. So that's the best we can do. She doesn't have that much time to prepare. So let me know tomorrow how it goes.
Tell me, you said Skype, Rizzo. I see it on the website. Would you be available for role playing after 8?
I will do my best, but there's going to be people doing role playing after the show. So if I can't make it, somebody can help her.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate your help, and you're a blessing.
Hey, I appreciate that. And you could do me a favor. If you see that pond, right, between Port, it's on like the border of Port Jeff. Mm-hmm. Listen to me. Of head of the harbor and Stony Brook, right down the street. I forget that main strip there that goes through that part of Stony Brook. But the old post office is there. If you actually see that, get some pictures of it for me.
Okay, you think that's close to Suffolk? I've never been there to that area of that court.
It couldn't be too far because Stony Brook is not that big. It's not that big a place.
Okay.
But good luck and let me know tomorrow what happened.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Dan. How do I screw that up? It's Dan over here in Long Island. Well, I guess he's going to Long Island tomorrow. But if you are in the area by that old post office in Stony Brook, there's a beautiful lake there, and there's a little bridge that and they got ducks. Hey, beautiful place. You can actually forget about all this court stuff when you go there. You can actually forget that you're on Long Island when you're there. We're gonna try area code 929 again. Area code 929, you're live on the No State Project. What's your name? Where you calling from? I can hear you.
You can. Mark, this is Rick again. I didn't call you. I don't know why I'd be up on your line.
That's really odd. Okay, well, the audio is terrible, so I'll drop it. So wow, I don't know what happened. I don't have that much time left on the big show today, so I'm not going to take any more calls. But what I do want to do is address some of the basics here, so maybe Dan's daughter can follow up and she can listen to the end of the broadcast. And first of all, she did pretty good with that question, asking the judge if he's going to put that in writing, because the idea, and this is something we have to keep revisiting because new people are joining the broadcast and listening to all the time. So you're going to get a lot of false choices, and you're going to get a lot of just lies, flat out lies from these lawyers with the robes on. And yeah, it was adjusted of the peace, so maybe in New York they don't have to be a lawyer, but they're still scum nonetheless. And you have to assume, look, this is New York. You got to assume that they're talking out of their butts. You have to just assume that they're lying. Your job is to get them to verify. So when they say something stupid that we know is a lie, well, jurisdiction's a trial issue, you can even ask them, if I sue you, you're going to let that go? You're not going to, you're going to allow really? It's one of the stupidest lies. It's so transparent. It's so obviously false. We have to drop this idea that just because these scumbag lawyers gave themselves the title of honorable, that they actually are. These people sought out a position of violent domination with absolutely no responsibility to their victims at all. Zero. What does that tell you? What kind of a person does that? Do you think these, like this piece of garbage up in Minnesota, he didn't get that robe and seek to have that robe because he was such a nice guy who wanted to see justice? This piece of filth was a career prosecutor. There's no altruistic motive. There's nothing about going in and trying to, I want to help resolve conflicts. You could go into arbitration and mediation for that if you really want to do that. You don't have to seek out a position of domination. So you have to drop the pretense that these people are anything but criminals. And don't just think that criminals are just gun-wielding and knife-throwing, animals. Look, this is the 10th anniversary of the Wall Street crashing of the economy. And those criminals wore $3,000 suits. You expect them to care? You expect me to care? I'm wearing a $7,000 suit. Come on! They don't give a damn. So remember, the judge, just because he calls himself honorable, is anything but. Assume that he's lying. When they say you only have two options, plead guilty or not guilty, they're lying to you. There's option number 3. That is filing a motion to dismiss. Because guess what? If you file against them, no judge is going to tell a fellow judge, sir, you have two options. You are either going to file an affirmative answer or you're going to try to settle. That's it. No, they're going to go for option number 3, motion to dismiss for absolute judicial immunity. And they are not going to say to this judge or any prosecutor, they are not going to say to them, jurisdiction is a trial issue. Yeah, but Mark, we're talking about criminal. We're not talking about just criminal. And motions to dismiss are pretrial motions in criminal too. And there is no mystique. There's no huge difference. There's no sophisticated difference between a civil proceeding and a criminal proceeding. The only differences between a civil tort and a crime is that the crime is a tort that is brought in the name of the state, the fiction called the state, and is brought by a county or state attorney. And there's jail time attached. Those are the only differences. In fact, I have at markstevens.net on the the standing cross reference. I have right on there a case that from the Honorable Supreme Court. A crime is a public tort. It is publicly prosecuted instead of privately. That's it. It's publicly prosecuted and there's jail time. That's the only difference between a tort and a crime. That's it. So they'll lie through their teeth. So another thing you have to understand is that the prosecution cannot or may not argue without evidence. They may not argue without proof. You'll get critics that will say otherwise. There'll actually be some judges and prosecutors that say, but that is evidence of their corruption. That's it. Not that they defeated you as far as your argument or your defense. What they're doing is they're throwing away the rules. Oh, I've mentioned this on the show many times. How do you know? Because their own ethical rules lay out, Rule 3.1 is the general rule, whether it's the American Bar Association or State Bar Association. They may not make a claim without facts and law to support it. Prosecutorial misconduct, of course, is arguing without evidence. And here's the kicker also. Ask the judge, and now they pull that crap, ask the judge, excuse me, do I get the same courtesy? Can I make legal claims against the prosecution with no evidence? Watch the response from the judge. If the prosecution can make arbitrary legal conclusions with no evidence, then I should be able to. But you know what? I'm not dishonest. I'm just going to point out how dishonest the proceeding is. We don't want to actually do that. But they lose their minds. Anytime they say the rules don't apply to the prosecution, you turn it around and ask if it doesn't apply to you. You'll see what happens. They might actually threaten you with a psyche eval. I had an email from somebody else that was threatening with that. I guess maybe that's becoming a routine thing. I hate to think that it would. But what other defense do they have? All they have when you're asking questions, gutting their presumption of fairness, gutting their presumption and pretense of legitimacy, all they have is violence. Because the whole system is based on violence. Forcing strangers to give the money. So they'll lie and lie and lie again. And if you don't use the word objection, don't interrupt the judge, don't ever do that. That's just bad manners. But you object. Call them on their BS. You have to make the word objection. I know I'm not saying that there are magic words in court, but there are words you have to say, and that you have to say objection. Another thing you may not be aware of is that to be a witness, they have to have personal first-hand knowledge. You think the police officer has personal knowledge that the laws apply to you? The best he can do is say somebody else said it does. Somebody else told me. They told me in the academy. That's not personal first-hand knowledge. So that's why they keep going and critics keep defaulting to they don't have to prove that. That is evidence of a rigged game. Under their own rules, due process at a minimum is notice and opportunity to defend. And they've also ruled that the hearing must be meaningful. See? And if they can argue that the very foundation of their case, the friggin' foundation, the single most important claim that they're making, that they don't have to prove that, then you're not getting notice and opportunity to defend. It's common knowledge. Evidence. Give me the evidence. You got to have the evidence. And they don't have it. So what you're doing tomorrow, or anyone going into court, if you're new at this, you are holding the prosecution to their burden of proof. And object to their lies and call them out on it. This thing about jurisdiction being a trial issue. Objection! Is it a trial issue only? You know you're dealing with a crook because he's lied, and when you ask him that question, he won't dare answer it. Asked and answered. Fungal. No, it hasn't, you lying piece of garbage. That's why they have to have a position of dominance, violent domination and no responsibility. Because outside of that court, people wouldn't give them the time of day. They have to have that force. They have to have the threat of contempt. Because what they're saying is garbage. And maybe I'll be addressing this on Saturday's show if one Galt calls up. If somebody makes a claim, and making a claim against you, they have to have proof. They have to have evidence. And if you ask them for evidence, and they give you a circular argument, that is not responsive. Asking for proof of your argument and just restating the argument is not responsive. If you call them out on being non-responsive and say that's not actually proof, they don't get a magical release of their burden of proof by saying, well, now you're arguing philosophy, you idiot. What the hell is wrong with you, Mark? How unbelievably stupid can you be? If you don't accept a non-responsive answer, you're arguing philosophy. Yes, because I'm so retarded. I'm so mentally deficient. I don't know the difference, and they expect that you won't know the difference. The biggest challenge, other than the violence we have, is staying on point and holding them to their burden of proof and not accepting this crap from them. A non-responsive answer does not relieve them of their burden of proof, and somebody ranting on the internet that it's philosophy doesn't change anything. If somebody says the Constitution applies to me, they have to have evidence. And if they give me a court opinion, that is not responsive. And my calling it non-responsive doesn't magically change the nature of it. How can I be arguing philosophy when somebody's making a claim against me and not giving evidence? This is the depth of the depravity and how dishonest some of the critics to the big show are. But you have to expect that. Somebody who earned his living, and this hopefully he calls. He calls himself a reformed scammer. That he misled people 40 years ago and he's trying to atone for taking money and scamming people. So what does he do? He projects it onto me. I don't know. Maybe he'll join us on the Saturday show. We will be live, and hopefully we will, the YouTube stream, I won't have to do it this particular way. We'll get it in HD. But I will have the good audio at markstevens.net. I will also have the latest video on the ticket that was thrown out in Delaware, which is really cool. And we have direct evidence that the motion to dismiss was granted. Direct evidence. So I'm sure someone like Juan Galt, you'll spin some BS, and hopefully people are being skeptics and they're not just taking your garbage at face value. So that will be posted on markstevens.net. And also I will have the tyranny spotlight on this piece of filth in Minnesota, the 8th Judicial District, Stephen J. Wenzel, that if you ask a police officer a follow-up question to what he just testified to, he will clear the court and threaten you. Yeah, that's honorable. But we will be live. This has been episode 61, live from the Fortified Compound in Mesa, Arizona for April 18th, 2018. I will be live on Saturday streaming right here on my YouTube channel. So tune in for that. So till then,